apologies for the technical difficulties that you will see later on in Serious or Satire in Top 5, although it is a little bit humorous. So enjoy today's show.
Welcome to Not So Silent, episode 18. We'll say what you can't. We think we're right, but I wouldn't bet on it. Today is our very first show, or at least my very first show, officially coming to you from Nashville as we have moved. We're in Nashville, starting to settle in. Boy, it is good to be here. So I got joining with me, I'm Taylor Duncan. I'm the host of the show. I got Chris Herdigan in St. Louis, Sean Phelps in Kansas City. We got a ton, holy cow, because we missed our Monday recording. We have a ton of stuff to cover. Lots of Biden news. Good to see him in the news more so than Trump. Lots of Biden news. We're going to talk a little bit about mail-in balloting because that's a disaster. Surprise, surprise. Lockdowns also not good. Surprise, surprise. Shocker to no one on this show. We got a little bit of sports news, an update on the Gambler's Corner, some serious or satire, some prognostication station. We are going to start talking about the actual election coming up and our top five ways to visually spot a liberal. All right. So before we officially get started, please do me a giant favor. For those of you who have been listening, do me a big favor and pass this stuff out. Send it out on Twitter. Connect with us on Twitter at Not So Silent Pod, at Not So Silent Pod. Facebook, go to facebook.com/Not So Silent Pod. Instagram as well. Of course, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, subscribe or follow us, and YouTube, do the same. Please help us pass this out. We started this show because we are just sick and tired of the crazy, uncommon sense that's being spread around. And we wanted to bring a little bit of common sense, or at least our stupidity, to the world out there. So hopefully you guys enjoy us speaking our minds. I know many people can't or feel like they can't, so we'll do it for you. All right, Chris, Sean, welcome in. Chris and Sean,
I just want to say about your move. It's good to have you farther away from me. It's wonderful. I feel like I can breathe more of the air, less of your ego is invading my space. It's wonderful.
Thank you for that. So I made the move before Ben Shapiro did because I knew this was going to be the podcast capital of the world, and I was needing to get out of Chicago, get away from the craziness up in Chicago. And I'm telling you guys, it feels like I have entered a different world. I'm in Nashville, so it's still a big, larger urban area. And boy, though, is it different from going to my kids' schools. Just to give you the scope, the two spectrums. One of my sister's children goes to Chicago Public School, and they have a teacher who's transgender. So they've had to accept and understand how that works. Whereas dropping my kids off at school yesterday, we went in early before this class had started to meet the teachers. And I'm listening and I hear this faint little music in the background. And I go, holy cow, that's a Christian song. That's a really, really good Christian song. And I asked the teacher, I said, was that your music? And she got really scared. She's like, well, yeah, but I turn it off before the kids come in. I said, no. I get it. And I understand, and I love it. That's why I moved here. So it's just cool to see the differences that we're going to experience down here, not to mention a lot of other things, a lot of people saying y'all. So
I would have been more excited if she had a belt buckle that had an American flag. And like when you asked her that question, she said like, F yeah, it is. What y'all gonna do about it? Or something like that. I don't like that she was scared, but thank you for bringing her comfort. She's a patriot.
If you try to turn off my music, I'll get my gun.
Yeah, no, I'm not that far south. I haven't hit Alabama yet. So, all right. So let's get started. Today's topics. I want to talk about Biden. The news is so dominated by Trump. And I know even Ben Shapiro has said, boy, he's just got to get out of the way and let Biden dominate the news cycle. And interestingly enough, Biden has given many opportunities. The problem is, I don't know that the news cycle for most of the media is going to cover it, but the big news of the day, and then we'll get to I think the even more important news that happened last week, but the big news of today is the Hunter Biden Burisma emails linking Joe Biden. So Joe Biden has, he has come out and said, I had no part of, didn't even know what my son was doing in these foreign countries, had no idea what was going on. I never spoke to him about it. And everyone just said, okay, well, hey, Biden, that's what you say, Joe. Okay, we'll trust you. because you're senile. So we'll just listen to whatever you have to say. But now there have been a laptop that was secured by the FBI has started to go through the hard drive and found emails that tie from the second or third in command on the board over at Burisma to meeting with Joe Biden while Joe Biden was the then vice president about 8 months prior to him, very publicized when he called the Ukrainian government and said, you need to fire the prosecutor who is investigating Burisma. And he has proudly said that I got that guy fired, the prosecutor, but he said I had no part of it. It had nothing to do with Hunter. I didn't even know what Hunter was doing. Well, now there is an email from the second or third in command at Burisma to Hunter thanking him for introducing him to his father in DC when his father was the then vice president. What do you guys make of that?
I guess the question is, does any of this stuff stick anymore? Because we hear scandals so often. There's another scandal coming out, which is information that's going to be leaked about what happened in Benghazi. That's supposed to be another bombshell. We're going to have a number of October surprises, but the challenge is the media going to push this out? Now, where was that article, Taylor? Was that the New York Times?
So the New York Post publicized it. That's what it was actually trending on Twitter. Was you could find Hunter Biden was trending on Twitter, and like third on it was New York Post, because New York Post was the one who really pushed it out. And my understanding was Giuliani was the one who first got the whistleblower, first went to Giuliani and then went to the New York Post. So
I wonder how much of this stuff like the Republican Party has had, and they're holding it for October. And this is just obviously the timing is like, let's do this while it's fresh in people's minds, kind of like what happened with Hillary. Could be somewhat strategic. But it's one of these things where, like, I believed he was corrupt anyways. I mean, there were too many things linking it together. It wasn't hard evidence, but it was close enough. So it doesn't impact me. I still don't like Biden, and I don't think it's going to impact an independent unless it gets pushed through the media, not just Fox.
I agree with you, Chris. I mean, come on. Hunter Biden was being paid $50,000 a month to work for a energy company in the energy sector. He had no prior experience in that sector. He didn't speak the language, and all of a sudden he's on the board for this Ukrainian company.
That's not true. That's not true. His dad was involved in geothermal. He's been blowing hot air for a long time. So
very good. So, and following the New York Post, breaking news from about 30 minutes ago was an email obtained by Fox News show a Ukrainian gas company official asking Hunter Biden in 2014 to quote unquote use your influence unquote to stop quote politically motivated actions end quote. So this is starting to heat up. I agree with you, Chris. I'm guessing the Republicans had this. Maybe it was a week ago, maybe it was a month ago, maybe it was 3 months ago, and they're waiting to drop these bombs. I just don't know that anyone's going to care. I just think everyone's going to look at it and go, yeah, so what? So, and here's what I did to find out. Who would you say is the largest media company out there outside of Fox News, arguably left-winged media company?
Disney?
No, CNN, right? So I go to CNN.
Fox? Wait, who owns CNN?
So CNN and Fox. Fox is on the right and CNN's on the left. Those would be the two major players, obviously, of New York Times and things like that. But so I go to CNN.com to see their coverage of it. And the major story, and it's been like this for the past 2 hours, is GOP injects new chaos into election. And it's talking about the ballot drop boxes and, Republicans who violate state laws and whatever. And it actually nowhere on their page, nowhere. It's got the Amy Coney Barrett, Judiciary Committee hearings, but nothing about what's going on with the Biden stuff, even though that is not 2-day-old news. That is brand new. The last 3-4 hours, they're not saying a word because unfortunately, that's what we have now is so much of America, I think, is based on what news you listen to.
I want to give a little bit of credit to CNN. I don't know if you watched the interview with Nancy Pelosi and Wolf Blitzer recently, but they're actually doing real journalism a little bit, not a lot. He's still licking her feet as he asks these challenging questions. But it's like, what has brought about this, like 1 or 2 clips out of the 100 a day where you guys are actually asking some tough questions of these Democratic leaders? I think it was about why doesn't the stimulus bill get done, right? That was it.
I think what happened was I feel like Trump positioned the stimulus bill so well that even a leftist wants it to go through because everyone in America wants this money to go through. And Trump says, look, I'm happy to give every, American who needs money $1,200. I'll do that.
Down, $1,200.
Yeah. I don't want all the other fluff.
Yeah. The way Nancy's talking, and I can hear it behind her words because I know exactly what she's saying. She wants bailouts for bad policies in her states. I could hear it between what she was saying, but man, she sounded really bad there, really defensive. Yeah. But anyway, so you're doing good journalism a little bit.
If you haven't seen that, I found that to be amazing, but don't pull me off topic here. We'll get to journalism being dead, which we talked about last time. I want to stay on Biden. You don't be a politician in here and get me on Pelosi. We're staying on Biden. So Biden heavily linked to Burisma, and the left isn't covering it. Now let's go one step further. And I think this is the biggest by far story of the election. And Sean, you had mentioned a few weeks ago, you pulled up the debate topics from back in like the 30s or something like that. And the top 6 debate topics from 1934 election and how different they were from like what actually was important in the country at that time. Do you remember the topics that were going on?
Yeah, it was, I can't remember the specifics, but it was things like, everybody was worried about like the price of wheat or just really minor things. Like there's a lot of horse poop in the cities and we don't know what to do with all the horse poop. And we hope the president has a good answer to the horse poop problem. And then when you look at the country 10, 20 years later, the actual things that mattered were banking regulation or non-banking regulation causing the Great Depression, speculation, wars, world wars, cars kind of did away with the problem. So there were 2 parts of it, was looking at like the free market solving some of the problems that people wanted the government to solve, but also, the topics of debate being completely off base for what the president was going to actually need to do to guide the country in the right direction. For obviously they're only going to be there for the next 4 years, but to put it in the right direction to be successful in the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. And usually whatever topics we were talking about at this time for debate are based on the past and they're not based on the future.
And I'll get into that because I believe the biggest issue in the election, and there are people who are pushing it, but everyone's talking about race relations and violence in cities, or they're talking about corporate tax rates and the bailouts, and they're talking about even COVID and the response to COVID. But by and large, it's over. We're moving forward. I don't think either president, person becoming president in January essentially is going to make a difference in how we're going to handle COVID, maybe from a fiscal standpoint. But I have to agree with the fact that like we're talking about these things, raising or lowering taxes, and I get it. It's important. It's going to cost $3,000 this year or save us $3,000 this year, whatever it is. That's minor in the grand scheme of things to what I feel like is should be the true concern of every American, what will change our democracy forever, at least for the very long-term near future, which is packing the courts, ending the filibuster, and adding states, or packing the Senate. And that's not being talked about. And somehow Joe Biden is getting a pass on this. He has continued to refuse to talk about will he or will he not pack the courts. In fact, he made a statement. He was asked by a media member who was being pretty nice to him, but then said, hey, will you pack the courts? And he said, well, I'm not going to talk about that. And the media member said, well, I believe our viewers want to know, don't you think they deserve to know how you stand on this? And his answer was, no, they don't deserve to know. And I thought that was remarkable. In fact, the Babylon Bee did as well. And the Babylon Bee, I think, has this hilarious, their headline is, and I should have used it in Satire,
I know what you're talking about.
Which is Democrat proposing to his girlfriend, says he won't reveal position on adultery until after the wedding.
I love that. That was so good.
I mean, how is it possible that someone who arguably, and I believe, and I think many people believe, the most important decision that a president will make or he'll make is, should we pack the courts or not? That will dramatically change the direction of our country, way more so than some of these minor topics of raising the corporate tax rate or things like that. And yet he can say, I'm not going to answer, and then go a step further and say, no, you don't deserve to know my stance on it. You're running for the president. I deserve to know your stance on everything, any and everything that I want to know that you're going to do in the next 4 years.
There's a better question here.
How can someone say you don't deserve to know and get away with it? How is that not?
Is get away with it, and why isn't it hurting him in the polls? The polls are showing him to have a historic turnout, and the way it was worded when I read the article was he would have a greater turnout and landslide victory than Obama, and the best since FDR, who had just gotten to the tail end of World War II and was winning the war. And Trump inversely would have such a low turnout and such low voting that it would be one of the worst on record in 60 years. So, meaning it's not just that this is happening, it's that the gap would be so vast, but none of it makes any sense when you look at everything else besides the polls. I mean, I've got a couple notes here, but what have you guys seen that is not a poll that indicates to you Trump is going to be the victor here?
His rally yesterday in Pennsylvania that could have filled a football stadium, and then Biden's rally in Florida that had 6 cars lined up watching him.
Pence had 4,000 people. In Pennsylvania, Biden had a maximum of 20, including his staff. In Arizona, I think it was 8 people. I mean, you got to be kidding. So that's one. What else have you guys seen?
We have more listeners on our shows than Biden has showing up to his rallies.
That's scary, right? You've got here's a kind of an interesting one. The number one sign that was bought in most Midwestern states was a Trump Pence sign. Second and third were something else for cutting your grass or whatever. And I want to say number 5 was a Kamala Harris and Joe Biden sign. Just lawn sign sales alone. Okay, we've got the amount of registered voter increase for Republicans in Pennsylvania alone was 168,000 more registered Republicans since 2016. That number for Democrats increased by 40,000, meaning the deficit there, 128,000 people in PA alone, is more than the 70,000 or 78,000 marching he had in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. None of this makes any sense. And then you've got the 56% that said they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. So how is it that everything in the world looks like a Trump landslide, but the polls would be this far off? My understanding is the way they poll, right, is they will, call people, but they have to weight it based on what percentage they think is actually Democrat or Republican. I'm still a little fuzzy, but that's their business. Their business is to get these polls right. Is it just that the general will be that far apart, but the Electoral College will be trumped, pun sort of not intended? What's going on?
I looked at a pretty big article from a Harvard a social scientist about election
I think
polling.
what's going on is your internet sucks.
No, it's you.
Yeah, it's you.
100% you. Yeah.
So this Harvard sociologist talking about election polling said that these polls are typically 6% off in their margin of error, not 3%. And the problem with the 2016 polls was that they didn't adjust for education. So people are much more likely to respond to a poll if they're college educated, and college educated voters tended to favor Clinton. So Trump had all these non-college educated voters that he dominated that weren't represented properly in the polls. So that's what happened in 2016. Now, supposedly the polls have corrected for that, but there's some things that they don't correct for. They don't correct for mail-in ballot concerns, COVID, are people more or less likely to vote, and they don't understand voter turnout well. They also don't understand how there isn't a lot of evidence to prove that people say they're going to vote for Biden, but actually vote for Trump. That's not something that they've been able to find evidence to support. But what they don't know is how many people that respond to polls do actually vote. So the polls plus or minus 6% is what we're hearing.
Yeah, I could see that, Sean. And here's just another example. And I know this is an anecdote, and I don't think we should lead with anecdotes, but USA Today did a poll on who won the VP debate, right? This is another proof of journalism's just dead. USA Today runs a poll on who won the VP debate. and they accidentally forgot to include Pence as an option. Like, really? It was just two people. Harris. Like, I mean, this is, again, I know that's a joke. Well, it's real, but, and I know that's an anecdote and stuff, but I find it hard to believe that these polls are right. I just don't.
Here's another one.
It makes no sense.
The Trump approval rating in the Republican Party is 95%. The next highest we've seen in the last 60 years was Eisenhower at 88%. All right. So Trump, I think, had 86% in 2016. He has 95% now. That's unprecedented for a Republican person. Also, there's another weird stat that if you are an incumbent who's gotten 75% or more of the primary votes in a primary, which is kind of weird when you're an incumbent, you would think they would always get that, but they don't. They've won every single time. He had, I want to say 90% of those or 88% of those as well. Nothing makes sense. There's no way they're all this far off, or they're all going to lose their jobs, right?
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get to that in the prognostication station. Sean, you mentioned the mail-in balloting. I wanted to get into that because I think this is something, again, the left has drummed this up as Trump's conspiracy theory, and Trump is trying to pull a fast one in and screw with the election and everything else, which I think is remarkable because Biden also came out and said if he loses, it will have to be because something messy was done in the background, which is his way of hinting at if he loses, he's not going to accept it, but whatever. So the mail-in ballot, here's some information on the mail-in balloting. I don't know if you guys heard this. 50,000 mail-in ballots, 50,000 people, from Franklin County, Ohio, which is one of the more populated counties, got sent the wrong ballot. 50,000, over 20% of the ballots that got shipped out by the USPS were wrong. They sent the wrong ballots. Second one, there was a mayoral candidate in Carrollton, Texas, who just got arrested for voter fraud, because he filled out 84 ballots for himself. And lastly, and this also came from USA Today, they are projecting, based on 2016 data, if 50% of the people in America do mail-in ballots, I don't know why they actually went as high as 75%. I can't imagine 75% are going to, but if 50% use mail-in ballots, 1.03 million ballots are going to be thrown away because they are done incorrectly. Either open, filled out wrong, not signed, all this stuff. 1.03 million equaling 185,000 in Florida, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the four arguably most contested areas. 185,000. Remember, he won Michigan by 10,000 votes only. So, and that's just going to get thrown out because they're done wrong. So why is it that the Democrats are so like, oh, we should totally mail in our ballots? This is such a great idea, when everything is showing that the mail-in ballots are going to be a disaster, a complete disaster. I promise you, we will be having our podcast on December 1st, almost a month after the election, and we are still going to be talking about who our next president is going to be.
Well, I think Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what they're pushing for is universal mail-in balloting, where everybody has to do it. That way it's sort of even across both parties. And I think it's backfiring because they didn't get that. That's not going to happen. And I think more Democrats will do mail-in voting than Republicans because they're more afraid of COVID. A recent survey. What?
Yeah, I agree. I think
so. It's just going to help Republicans. I think it's just backfiring big time, and I think they're starting to realize that. I think they're walking that back a bit.
Yeah, I think it's now they're just saying get out and vote. And then the last thing, I gave you the anecdote of when I went in and voted, and it took 2.5 hours, and they had the machines all wrong with the wrong date and everything. Mail-in ballot, the balloting, it's going to be a disaster. There's going to be problems, and either party, whether it's Trump or Biden, and I'm sure some of these very hotly contested Senate races, those things are going to be going through the courts for a long time to figure out who actually won, because it's going to be a disaster. And I wish they had not pushed this mail-in balloting. I think it's caused a disaster of epic proportions. Anyone following the ACB confirmation hearings?
A little bit, yep.
I just wanted my favorite line from today. Ted Cruz, who he was definitely the winner today. By the way, ACB is crushing it. In fact, even on CNN, one of the reporters said in a different day and age, she would be approved with 70 votes in the Senate.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She has been awesome, and she will get approved. But Cruz was the winner today. And this is what he had said. He mentioned that his Democratic colleagues showed how much they don't care because they didn't show up to the hearing today. And to which point Dick Durbin, our wonderful senator from Illinois, he sucks, came up and got him. He said, "Can I please interrupt?" And Cruz said, "Sure." And Durbin said, "Well, Senator, there is a COVID pandemic going on and people didn't show up." To which Cruz bitch slapped him and said, "They showed up yesterday, so I don't think that's the right excuse." I thought was awesome. So, so that kind of fills us in on Biden and our mail-in ballots. Last major kind of political topic: lockdowns. They are seen as a disaster. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the one of the leading members of the World Health Organization, which I don't know why we still cite them because they obviously were majorly flawed at the beginning of this whole thing, but they came out and said that the lockdowns really didn't do anything to avoid the virus. All they really did was slow down the hospitalization, but they actually didn't impact it. On top of it, you have your Great Barrington Declaration, which now I believe over 10,000 scientists and medical professionals have signed on that say lockdowns are not the right answer. And lastly, this was a journal in MedRx4, and I believe it's a peer-reviewed journal. This is quote unquote, "Lockdowns did nothing. Lockdowns have no evident impact in the spread of the disease and transmission and everything else." And it's now getting wider and wider and wider. People are coming out and saying the lockdowns were not necessarily great, maybe short term. Do you think that hurts the Democrats, who I think really, by and large, pushed for more and more lockdowns than anyone else? Chris, Sean?
I mean, this is a boring topic because we've known this for months and the data has already been there to show this. And so the question is will this data convince Democrats that we need to open up? And I think what we found is they are the party of science as long as the science backs their narrative. So kind of like the Biden thing, I think it's going to fall on deaf ears. I don't think it's going to do a thing, or it's going to take months of pounding it, especially since we disavowed the WHO. I don't know that we get to do the Democrat playbook, which is like, no, they suck. They don't know anything. Okay, well, no, they do, because it does agree with us. So it kind of like puts us in the same situation of like, do we really want to, toe the WHO line when we left them?
I agree. I don't think it's going to do anything. All right, so let's get into sports. Let's have a little bit of fun. Move off of politics for a minute. We'll probably come back, but let's get into sports. So a couple of sports updates. Le'Veon Bell was released. So Le'Veon Bell was released from the New York Jets after they were unable to find a trade partner with a different team. So I'm going to ask you guys, how did that holdout a few years ago with the Steelers work out for him?
Well, I mean, it kind of did because he got the contract, but man, he made the big mistake signing with the Jets.
Did he get more money than the Steelers offered or no?
I don't know that he did. He lost a year.
Yeah.
He lost a full year, but more important backs aren't the wealthiest, contracts or most lucrative. And I get the whole debate there with NFL contracts. But think about his legacy. That guy was he was the top of the top with the Steelers. He then sits for a year, then goes to the Jets. I don't even know if he would be listed as a top. I don't think my kids have any idea who he is.
No, he's been very bad.
His legacy is a disaster.
Yeah, I can tell you it's bad. So I don't think that worked out well. And I think a lot of running backs have already noticed that, and a lot of running backs have kind of signed on the dotted line. We haven't seen a lot of holdouts. I think unless you are such a good running back like a Zeke Elliott, I think it's tough to hold out and have that work. You have to be really out of this world good. I wonder if a Saquon's going to do that. But then again, he's got injury history. This is 2 years in a row where he's got injured, or is this did he get injured last year as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was the year before.
Okay, so he may have to take he may have to take money too, right? Like, that's a tough position, man. Like, you just kind of get used, abused, and tossed away. Sort of like what Democrats do to minorities for their votes. Yeah.
Very true. All right. So the NFL.com just came out with new power rankings. And they have the Packers number 1. What say you, Chris?
Please lose. Please. Sean, please lose. I'm hoping Brady just rages after losing to the Bears and has a good game and remembers what down it is and is able to pull out a win. But, I mean, if the Packers lose, they'll be the best one-loss team in the country, whereas we are the, worst one-loss team in the country. So...
All right, so you moved it to the Bears, which I appreciate. I think that was the real story. I found this to be the whole list should be thrown away based on this lack of credibility. They have
it's
the
pretty
Bears
nice to be on the bye week and get bumped up to number 1, though.
The Bears power ranked number 16, and the Buccaneers, who have a worse record, and the Bears just beat them, are ranked 12. So the writer of this clearly doesn't follow football, or at least is not a Bears fan. Let's just say that.
I mean, that is odd. It is odd. There's not a single one-loss team ranked below us, and many 2 and 3 teams are ranked above us.
So,
I think it's a good thing for the Bears. They'll play with a chip on their shoulder. This is a good place to be. You don't want them getting too high on themselves. Keep them scrapping.
So if the Bears and Bucks are playing again today, no spread, straight up, how much money are you putting on the Bears?
0.
Right. We're not gamblers. That's the answer. We don't gamble, Sean. We just enjoy the game.
I don't gamble. That's against my moral code.
I'd bet a hard slap in the face that the Bears would win.
All right. So speaking of that, Chris, Gambler's Corner. Let's get to the gambling.
Okay, so last week we Bears covered. I was the only one to pick the Bears because you guys are losers. I picked the Eagles, as did Taylor. They should have covered, but that was some spread there. So Sean did pick the Steelers. Good for him. We all rolled the Dolphins. You picked the Eagles, Taylor, not the Steelers. We all picked the Dolphins. We were good there. And so Taylor was looking rough until he pulled one out with the Chargers covering big time, almost coming away with the win. And so because we all lost some games in there, none of us won the parlay. We are all at minus $10. So listen to us. And I would put it this way. We're like the roulette wheel who's been hitting red a lot. Black must be due. So coming up this week, we got Packers and Bucks. Bucks are getting 2.5 at home. Who do you guys like?
Packers.
Picking the Bucks. I am banking on Brady Rage. He has gone to the laboratory. He is going to inject whatever amount of avocado he has to into his veins. He's going to take this one. All right. Falcons, Vikings. Falcons are getting 3.5.
Vikings.
Ooh, I'm taking the Falcons. I'm going with the new head coach, Juju. All right. Cowboys and Cardinals. Cards are laying 2.5 against the Red Rocket.
Cowboys.
Cardinals are laying 2.5, you said?
Yeah. Now remember, Dalton was pretty good when he had weapons. Yeah, Dalton was pretty good as long as Adrian Green was healthy. He's got better weapons now than he did in Cincinnati.
I'm going to take the Cards, and I will give you the points.
Okie doke. I took the Cards as well. And for LA, San Francisco, we're doing the over-under at 50.5.
Which LA team?
The Rams.
Under.
Good call.
What was the over-under?
50.5. Jimmy G's back.
I'm going to take the over.
I'm taking the under.
So we're betting $10 on each. Mine is real. These guys bet fake money, so I'm actually down $10. They are down nothing, and we are
taking the over/under.
I'm taking the under, and we are parlaying all of our bets. And I believe it pays out $175 if you win this parlay. So that is Gambler's Corner. That's all I got for that, but I do have some sports stuff.
All right, go back to the sports stuff then.
All right, so LeBron won his 4th championship across 3 teams. Does this make him more impressive or less impressive?
Same.
I'm going to say yes, more impressive.
Why?
Now, I still think Jordan is the superior basketball player. But I think it's more impressive because it's not just a different team. I mean, you're talking different cast, different head coach, different conferences. So I think it's impressive. I think if anyone in any sport had done that, if you had a pitcher in baseball that had won, 4 World Series for 3 different teams, that would be considered very more impressive than if you just played for the Yankees for your whole career with a surrounding core of great talent. So, yeah, I think it's more impressive.
I'm going to say it's less impressive.
I would agree, except 3 to 4. Okay.
Yeah, I guess my reasoning is this. Okay, so he was going to where talent was, and he was acquiring the best talent in the league to play with him all the time. So it wasn't like he was staying where he was and trying to make it work with the people that he had. He would constantly change coaches, and I would argue that he was his own head coach most of the time, and these were just figureheads, but he would coach himself more or less. But he was going to where the talent was, as opposed to trying to build the talent around him. I do applaud him for going back to at least a small market team. It wasn't like Michael Jordan was like staying in a podunk, Oklahoma, right? He was staying in Chicago. It's a big city, right? I do applaud LeBron. I love that he went back to Cleveland, won them a championship. Thought that was really cool. Politics aside, which I hate as politics, I thought that was neat. I'm going to call it a wash based on both of our evidence. I don't know that it makes him more or less impressive. All right, my second question.
I think again, 4 championships is a big deal. Go on.
Well, you're on a big delay. So if you want to answer, but I want to move on to Dak and the injury he had. Did you guys see the video?
Yeah.
How would you describe that video to someone who hasn't seen it, Sean?
It's, oh man. I mean, imagine like watching somebody's foot get run over by a train and then holding their foot up. And I thought his shoe came off, but it was his foot.
It looked more like somebody was inside of his leg, severed all the bones and tendons, so the foot just sort of like, wobbled and spun around like all by itself. Like it almost.
I imagine if you like went into a meat market, and if those are still allowed now after coronavirus and all this, but if you went into a wet market and they were selling foots and the foot was just hanging from a pole
by a string, maybe like at the end of it, that's what his foot looked like. It was. It produces a visceral reaction. So the question is okay, now, was this a bad move? He took the franchise tag. He bet on himself. He didn't hold out. And now he had a pretty gruesome ankle injury. So what does the future hold for Dak? Should he have made that deal? Is he going to be okay? Or is somebody going to pay him? What do you think, Taylor?
I think he's, again, they make enough money that I think he was able to do that. When he was guaranteed what did he make this 20 like that, even on his tag, he'll be fine. But Hines think his ego was too much. He wasn't that good. He wasn't. He's not a Mahomes level talent, but that's the kind of money he wanted to command. And I just think his agent misled him a little bit too much with the $400 million he was going to make. He should have taken the deal that was on the table.
He feels a bit like an imposter, almost like a better version of Blake Bortles, but he's done it a few years now. It's not like it's just a 1-year thing. Like, for example, let's say the Cowboys let him go next year. Would you want him on the Bears?
Yeah, I like him. I like him. He was at Mississippi State. I liked him. I mean, I thought he was a great pick when they took him. I think they took him in the, second or third round?
Yeah.
And I mean, if the Bears can have him, obviously he's got to physically check out, but I like him. I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback. But again, you're comparing him to a Bears quarterback. I mean, Bears quarterbacks.
I mean, I would probably put him, if you look at this class of quarterbacks you've got right now, of the Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jacksons, and to some extent Russell Wilson. Wilson's a couple years older than those guys, but that class, if you go, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it was more of the pocket passers of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, right? He's kind of a Phillip Rivers. Hasn't done a lot in the playoffs, puts up great numbers. There's nothing wrong with him. I want him on my team. I want him in my locker room. Probably deserves to get paid in the top 10 in his position. I don't think he's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, but I think he's a good quarterback.
That's a perfect analogy. He is the Philip Rivers of this class.
Sean, I'm trying to pretend like his internet doesn't suck, but is that just me pretending? Because it sucks.
No, that's you pretending. Yeah, I also.
You also are pretending that his internet's good, but it's really bad.
Robot.
Yeah. You sound like you're talking slow. Honestly,
my internet's really that bad, huh?
I didn't think you could be more boring, but once you slowed down with the computer, it was actually more boring.
So, but now, do I think he should have signed the contract? And if he could go back and do it again, would he do it? Absolutely, 1,000%. You take the deal, knowing what you know now. But was it that big of a risk? I'm sure he probably took out some kind of insurance policy. That happens.
It's fully guaranteed his franchise tag, so it was like $35 million. It's not
like the guy. So we're not talking about an every average day Joe kind of problem here of like, oh my gosh, his life's over because he got hurt and he was playing on an unguaranteed contract. I mean, he's a millionaire. He's going to come back. He's a quarterback. He's young enough. I mean, Alex Smith played this week. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Just as gruesome of an injury.
I'd be shocked if Dak does not get $75 million guaranteed next year with somebody, which that's going to net him more than $100 million guaranteed given the franchise tag. So I think he'll be okay. All right, are we ready to move on to serious or satire, or do we have more?
Cowboys too.
Yep, let's move to serious or satire.
Okay, so first thing I've got is an American guest faces up to 5 years in prison for leaving a negative online review in Thailand for a hotel.
Serious. I'm just hoping it's serious.
Satire.
It's serious. And it was over a $16 corkage fee. And so, but according to the law, you can be prosecuted for that. And rather than just like plead out, he's like, no. It was bad service. I'm sticking with it and I'm fighting this. This guy. Don't get me wrong. Part of me loves this. Like, I want some customers to go to prison for being Karens, which this guy kind of is. I mean, it's a $16 corkage fee. Just let it go, buddy. But yeah. All right. Number 2, a Japanese sushi chef is sending shirtless bodybuilders to deliver sushi as a way to drum up more business.
Serious.
Taylor? He may have said something.
Free trial is expired.
Yeah. Did you hear all that? Are you responding?
Satire.
Okay, you were just thinking that long. Okay. That is also serious. Better question is apparently a lot of I don't think women order more sushi than men. So are there a lot of homosexual Japanese people that we don't know about?
Hang on.
Yeah, hopefully we can cut out this long delay. And, or we can just call this long, boring delay the coronavirus update. So, I mean, I can hear you. Can you not hear us? God, you dumb freckled bastard.
Our new host, Chris Erdogan. Congrats, Chris, on the promotion.
Oh, well, wow. Feels like corporate America. New title, no extra pay, more work. I'll take it. Gosh, this is the ginger in him that screws things up, though. He just, goes and has that lack of a soul in his computer.
So what do you got? Serious or satire?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can. So I'll go to the next one. Sean, we'll just do it together. In Germany, a new law was passed stating that you are required to walk your dog twice a day or you could be fined.
Satire.
Serious.
Oh, dang it. It was on a serious streak and I almost kept it going.
All right, screw Taylor. All right. There has been a baby boom in zoos around the world due to less people interacting with them. Basically, animals are having a lot more sex and people aren't watching.
Yeah, serious.
Yeah, it is serious, which kind of leads you to believe, like, you kind of feel bad. It's like maybe the lions are in there going, hey, honey, do you want to bang? She's like, well, there's a lot of people watching. It's like, I know, but I want to. It's like, why don't we just wait till later when nobody's watching? Like, no, not everybody wants a cuck in their relationship. So I kind of feel bad. Like I'm looking at these animals. Obviously, the monkeys don't care. They'll bang in front of anybody. But, Apparently, there's some civilized animals that just don't want to smash all the time in front of people. I sort of feel bad for watching them.
That's great.
But also explain the abundance of animal erections that don't get taken care of. Okay, last one I've got. After a thorough investigation, India has returned a pigeon belonging to a fisherman after determining it was not a Pakistani spy.
Serious?
This is serious.
I just thought that was in the category of you can't make this up. So
that makes me feel like I already felt good about our military, but when you've got people that are suspecting a pigeon as being an international spy, that tells me your military is a long way away from ours. Okay, like we've got B-2 bombers, and they're like this pigeon. Like that's the technology that they're worried about. Like, good Lord. All right, so that's it for Serious or Satire. Sorry, Taylor, you're still not on. We're going to go to our top 5, right? So, Sean, we've got top 5 ways you can spot a liberal without asking them their political leanings. We should probably say leftist, not liberal. All right, Sean, you want to go first?
Number 5, Che Guevara.
Can you not see me?
Oh, we can see you. We're just going without you. So we're on the top 5 now. I still can't hear us. Go ahead. So number 5, what was it?
All right. Well, I'm back.
Are you really, though? Because respond to this quickly.
I'm here.
You are not back. You are not back at all. We're going to finish our top 5, and then you'll do your first one. Oh, my gosh. Your internet is about as fast as the Bears running backs right now. Jeez. All right, Sean, what's your number 5?
Oh, my number 5
so how long?
Che Guevara t-shirt.
I like that. I like that. Mine is going to be when they correct you when you use everyday words that are pretty normal, like policeman, and they say, well, it's police person or officer. I said fireplace mantle the other day, and I had a lady go, like, what am I supposed to call it? A percental? Like, it's a shelf. I don't know, right? That's my number 5. Taylor, we'll wait 5 minutes for you to hear me finish this, and you do your top 5, or you do your number 5 and 4.
All right, my number 5. Girls in baggy jeans, guys in skinny jeans.
I like that. That works. Number 4. Okay, Sean, you're going number 4. Taylor's
sweet
out again.
Subaru, dude. Anyone driving a Subaru?
Oh, Subaru. Oh, Subaru. Okay, I like that. And that came in really late, but okay. Sean, go ahead. What's your number 4?
I can't really tell. I have a hard time with it, so I'm going to go with the obvious things like the lawn sign in their yard.
That one's pretty easy.
Yeah.
My number 4 is going to be when they introduce themselves and they have a hyphenated last name. At least the wife's liberal, and she probably beat the husband into it too.
So they chose to.
Yeah. So oh, my name is Susan Johnson Murphy, because our names are equal. It's like, oh.
Not a kid. Okay. Because a kid I get, but okay. I get that. Is there guys that do that? Is that a thing?
I think that they marry women who they're like the shy, reserved guys, and they get a girl that's slightly better looking than they should, but she's a liberal, and they don't really understand how much that weights like poorly. Like, give me a big girl with a horse for a face that's a conservative every day of the week. Like, I don't want the hot girl that's a liberal. I would legitimately probably kill myself. Maybe would drown my kids just to protect them from her ideology. I'm not sure. If the police are listening, this is still Serious or Satire, not the top 5. Taylor, if you can hear us, go ahead and try giving us your 3 and 2.
Wearing a mask when it absolutely does nothing, like riding a bike by themselves.
And number 2?
Corduroy sport coat. Basically anything that makes you look like a college professor.
I like that. Or the patches on the elbows. Those, that's good too.
Yeah.
I've got a fun one that I try. I try to say words like magnificent and magnanimous, but say magnificent and magnanimous, like in just a regular sentences. And I look to see if their eyes twitch and if they kind of, did you just sit, and I'm like, what's the problem? It's like the meow game in Super Troopers. Sean, are you on number 3?
Yeah, my number 3 is a bumper sticker. Is usually an easy way to tell. They tend to have a lot of those.
These are so boring. A lawn sign and a bumper sticker?
I can't tell. I'm very nervous. I'm scared to ask people.
Okay, and what's your number 2.
My number 2 is actually, so it's when we're both wearing a mask and they still give me a stink eye and cross the street.
Okay, not bad. I don't mind that. I'm trying to read my handwritings. You don't see anything. Taylor, let's go with I think you did your number 2. Give us your number 1 while I try to figure out my handwriting.
My number 1, real simple. Any wimpy looking dude. Like just a really scrawny, wimpy looking guy who clearly, at best he was on the JV soccer team in high school.
I think I've got this. Oh yeah. If they just asked to speak to the manager. Sean, what's your number 1?
Both ways. My number 1 is, they're really easy to find. If you just post anything on social media about free markets, they will come out of the woodwork. It's like moths to light.
My number 1 is going to be if you play the national anthem and they don't start acting like that girl from The Exorcist and spotting I'm started puking green pea soup and of course kneeling while they do it. So, Sean, Taylor, did we do your number 1? Yeah, we did, right? So, do you want to close this out, Taylor, while your internet's working?
Sorry for the internet. Sorry for the internet.
This is sponsoring the show today.
Yeah, this is the new dial-up, I guess, in Nashville. So we're gonna have to get that corrected for the next show. Just too bad. Hopefully the recording went well. Again, thank you guys for listening. Please do me a giant favor. Share this on all your different socials. Get this out to a bunch of people. And join us on Facebook.com/NotSoSilentPod and on Twitter @NotSoSilentPod. And YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and then go to notsosilent.com and join our newsletter.
And make sure to set up your AIM away message with some information about our podcast.
Oh.